Hi guys, and thanks for tuning in. This marks the inaugural Mechanic.com.au podcast, where we'll be carrying out regular interviews with everyone from industry specialists right through to successful workshop owners and the top technicians in the country, all with the goal of helping our listeners develop successful careers and highly profitable workshops. In this episode, we'll be getting some hard answers on everything from counterfeit parts, OE versus aftermarket, fitting customer supplied parts, and an update on the manufacturer data sharing agreement. Enjoy. Right, so we're joined by Stuart Charity, who's the Executive Director of the Australian Automotive Aftermarket Association. I know you're a busy man. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat with us, Stuart. How are you going?
Thank you very much, Ryan. Going very well, thank you.
Right, so we actually had a case study raised in our Facebook group the other week with a Toyota ignition coil. And aside from a few very minor differences on the packaging, different typeface and a minor spelling error, they're very difficult to tell the difference between. Can you tell us a bit about what's been going on in the market as far as counterfeit parts are concerned over the last few months or years?
Yeah, look, thanks, Ryan. There's certainly been an increase in media coverage about that, but we haven't seen any statistics back from the market to say there is an increase in prevalence in parts. Look, counterfeiting is a scourge on the automotive industry. It's a scourge on a whole lot of industries, and unfortunately, there are unscrupulous companies that do counterfeit parts and send parts out of inferior quality that are under different brands. That
Sure.
might be a car company brand, or it might be an aftermarket supplier brand. So we're very keen to raise awareness of counterfeit parts, how to avoid buying them if possible, and educating both the trade and consumers on how to identify them.
Sure. So just on the back of that, I've got a question here from Alan Hewitt. I want to know how to tell the difference between OE and counterfeit products. Counterfeit products are so well made these days it's almost impossible to tell the difference with brake pads, etc., containing asbestos. It's actually scary to think what we're being exposed to. As a repairer, what's the best way to ensure that we are fitting quality parts? As I said, it's very different to tell from the naked eye, whether it be an aftermarket replica or a genuine OE situation. What's the best way to us to vet parts and make sure we're fitting quality parts to customers' vehicles?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, and our advice is don't try and do it yourself in terms of trying to identify, because it is very difficult. The best way to protect yourself is to only buy parts through reputable suppliers. Now, that can be through, if you're looking to buy car company branded parts through the car company's dealership networks, but similarly, if you want to buy high quality aftermarket alternative parts, we recommend that you buy them through the major parts distribution channels, and they will do the vetting for you. They're not in the business of selling counterfeit parts. You get full warranty and recourse if there's any issues with the parts, and you will avoid parts. So I think the warning here is, and this goes for this is probably a good adage in life. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yep.
I mean, if you're going online and buying parts that are purported as the original part, and they're a tenth of the cost, then the warning bells are probably going to ring.
Yeah, and I'd imagine with a lot of the major suppliers that have quite a strong focus on quality control and vetting their supply chains, because they obviously don't want to damage their reputation, so it's in their best interest to try and ensure they are providing the highest quality parts.
Well, that's right, and the major parts suppliers, particularly to the trade in Australia, are large multinational companies, often listed on the stock exchange. They have quality assurance processes in place. They require their supply base to provide documentary evidence of testing and of compliance to Australian standards. They do random audits. As you quite rightly said, their reputation's on the line there, so that they're going to only be supplying high quality parts, and that's the safest way for anyone in the trade to protect themselves.
Sure. I'll just move on. I've got another question from Robert Dreggs. I'm curious about the distinction OE manufacturers are making between counterfeit and aftermarket. I've seen the line blurred a number of times recently. Now, in my mind as a tradesman over the years, there's a pretty distinct difference between aftermarket and counterfeit. Where is the confusion coming from?
Yeah, and that's probably and that's what prompted my article on fake parts or fake news. We've got some real concerns with I guess the direction, the campaign that the car industry is funding, which is an education campaign called Genuine is Best. We're really concerned with the direction that's going. Can I state from the outset, we have no issues with the car companies getting together and marketing collectively or communicating collectively. That's not the issue here. But where the problem's coming about is that we believe that they're in the language that they're using, particularly in their media releases and so on. They're using the terms non-genuine, aftermarket, and counterfeit interchangeably. I think most people are aware that there's a big difference between aftermarket and counterfeit, and we think that's misleading and not helpful to the overall debate. I mean, the reality here is that 60% of our member companies that supply parts to the Australian market are OE suppliers in some way, shape, or form. Car companies manufacture very few parts themselves, and so the majority of the parts are made for them under license by aftermarket or automotive parts suppliers. You also have a whole lot of parts that where you're upgrading and modifying a vehicle to make it fit for purpose. Australians are very, very strong in that. We've got a $5 billion aftermarket manufacturing industry in Australia. We've got globally competitive companies and that produce very, very high quality products, and we stand by those products. And to have them sort of labelled as counterfeit or inferior, we don't think is the way to go in terms of educating the public. So we would welcome a genuine debate on this. We would welcome a genuine road safety campaign to avoid buying counterfeit parts, but it's got to be based on facts rather than on a commercial or getting a commercial advantage.
Now, as far as counterfeit parts or inferior aftermarket parts, there's been a bit of debate around the legislation and the onus of the repairer in the event the customer supplies those parts. Now, with that Toyota ignition coil example I mentioned to you before, I believe the reasoning behind that is that the vehicle was an import and it was going to take 3 weeks or something to get from Toyota, and the customer found it online, which is obviously usually the case.
Yeah.
It's been raised by a few of the members that in the event as a workshop, if we fit a customer supplied part, we may be liable to rectify any damage or losses caused by that counterfeit part or the failure of the part itself. What exactly is the legislation on that, and how do we cover ourselves?
Yeah, look, this is a major issue, and it's obviously being, brought to the forefront with the increase in e-commerce and so on, and customers that want to buy from those channels, accessing those parts, but then needing someone to fit them. So, and it is a real problem area, and the issue here is that it is very grey. As far as the Australian consumer law says that if a customer walks in with a part that they've purchased separately through another channel, and they ask someone to fit that part, then you're only required as a workshop to warrant the labour component of it, and if the part fails, that's the customer's issue. But the problem is, how do you prove that? If the customer turns around and says, "Oh no, part was fine, it was the way it was fitted," and takes you to a small claims tribunal, then it's going to be very difficult for a workshop to be able to defend that. You would have to get independent mechanical expert reports and so on. So, sure. Our advice is be wary about that. I know a lot of workshops are not fitting parts that are supplied by the customer.
Yep.
I know some organisations are saying you should have a disclaimer in place, but disclaimers don't protect you from Australian consumer law.
Sure. And
if it's a view or it can't be proven whether it's a part or the labour, then it will fall back to the workshop to cover any consequential loss or damage. And the problem with that is that you have no recourse back to the supplier because you didn't actually purchase it.
Sure.
So whereas you do if you're buying directly from a supplier and fitting parts that you've acquired.
Sure.
So real grey area, and we aren't going to tell people how to run their business, but I'd be very wary as a workshop owner fitting supplied parts.
Sure. So as a best practice, it's probably best to ensure that we're using our own suppliers and and not taking on that possible risk.
That's right. That's right.
Sure. Now, just another one before we move on from the parts situation. Had someone lodge a comment on Facebook regarding some of those bigger chains buying up or acquiring a lot of the smaller suppliers in Australia, and they're under the impression that is going to cause the cost of parts to be driven up due to some level of monopolising of the parts supply industry. Can you comment on that at all?
Look, yeah, happy to. And they're right in the fact that there has been a lot of consolidation in the reseller and retailer channel of the industry over the past few years. That's predominantly being driven by the diversity and complexity in the car park. We've got in Australia for a market that sells only 1 million new vehicles a year. We've got 68 brands and 360 models and literally thousands of different variants of vehicles on Australian roads. We've got a big country, and we've got over 20,000 independent repair workshops out there that are all not wanting to stock parts. They want parts delivered for the cars that are in their workshops that day, and they want them delivered within a couple of hours, and that's making it very, very difficult for small independent retailers or resellers to compete because they just can't get the parts that they need to their customers in the time frame that they need them. So that's driven the consolidation. There's no doubt about that. You've got to have scale. You've got to have a distribution chain and so on. I don't buy the fact that that's driving up the cost of parts. Right. The big players that are in the market they compete with each other head to head and very aggressively. If anything, they're offering free delivery. The parts prices are very competitive. It's very easy to cross-match pricing and so on. So I think the price of parts has actually been driven down by the heavy competition at the moment. So I don't buy that bit of it.
Okay, that was interesting. And just one final one. I'm sure you've been beaten to death with this over the last few years, but Peter Hines asked, where are we with the choice of repairer campaign? And I think Peter's specifically referring to the mandatory data sharing agreement. Can you give us a status update on that?
Yeah, look, sure. And I know it's frustrating for everyone. This has been going on for a long time, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is change the law around for a specific industry, because it is not illegal for car companies to withhold repair and service data under Australian consumer law at the moment. So we need an industry-specific law, and governments just don't go and change the law willy-nilly. They need time and they need proof and so on. So as I think most people know, there's been a voluntary agreement in place that was put in place with the car companies, with the aftermarket industry, the Motor Traders Association and so on. We were always of the view that you need to make this mandatory, that there's too much at stake for car companies to comply voluntarily. And we're of the view, and we've been articulating that view very heavily to government, that voluntary agreement has made no meaningful improvement to the availability of repair and service information.
Right.
In August last year, the government announced as an election commitment and fulfilling an election commitment that we asked them for prior to the election to review the voluntary code, to look at whether it has had any impact on the market, and to look at all other options, including a mandatory code. That review has been undertaken by the ACCC, and I've got to say they've had 6 people working full-time on this market study. Wow. For 12 months now, and we're expecting, or the timelines for this is that their preliminary recommendations and findings are due mid this year. So we're in mid-June now. So any time in the next few weeks, we should get an indication of where ACCC are going to land on this. There's literally been hundreds of submissions that have gone in. We believe that the ACCC are going through deep diving on this. They're meeting with the right people. They're asking the right questions, and hopefully, and we're hopeful that they'll come out with the right recommendations, which is a mandatory code that will be in alignment with the arrangements that are in place now in Europe and North America.
Sure.
So hold tight is the message. We will know one way or the other in the next few weeks.
Just on the back of that, in the event that this is successful, does that help us try and extrapolate a timeline on when this we might see some changes, or it's still a bit up in the air?
So this review will make obviously the ACCC are the lead regulator for competition and consumer policy, but they only enforce the law that's already in place. So basically what would happen, this will be a recommendation back to government on any regulatory changes needed, and then it's up to the government to adopt those or not. So there is still a bit of water to go under the bridge, but we'd find it pretty unusual if the government asked the minister asked the ACCC to do an inquiry, the ACCC put a solid recommendation forward. It'd be unusual for the minister not to act on that. But stranger things have happened. We believe that the car industry will fight this pretty vigorously because they have all the way, and they're a pretty sophisticated and well-funded lobby group.
Sure.
So we'll be calling on repairers if the ACCC do come out with a finding or a recommendation. We'll be ensuring that the government are aware of how important it is that they implement it.
Fantastic. Oh, well, thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to us, Stuart. It's greatly appreciated, and hopefully we can touch base again in a few months.
No problem. Thanks, Ryan.
Excellent. Thanks, mate. Thanks a lot for listening. We hope you got something out of that interview. And if you know anyone in the trade that might also get some value out of it, make sure you share this podcast. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, or anyone you'd like us to interview, shoot us an email at contact@mechanic.com.au. That's contact@mechanic.com.au. See you next time.